Welcome to our Wednesday webinar. As you come in, please identify yourself, your name and where you're from. Last week, we asked everyone to their favorite ice cream flavor, and we'll give you some time. This week, we're going to ask you your favorite thing to eat, your favorite food as people come on. So I see some people coming on, and we'll have some others, and we'll give you some time to do that.
Thank you, Corey, for signing in. Let us know what church you're from. Hey, Charles from Susanville. You all doing such good work over there. Oh, his wife's cooking. He loves that. Hey, Jay.
Hey, Jay, welcome. I appreciate Jay coming on. He has seniors in college or university, so I asked him to come on. So rather than when you talk, I told him, I said, well, and Michael, yeah, he has some seniors that are in going through, so it's going to be helpful to see and hear from him.
There's Lee Niche, constant friend, and of course Blake from Great Northern, our DS up there.
Yes. Great. Favorite food, ice cream, I see, and I see, don't forget to put your favorite food. What do you like to eat? Your wife's cooking, I got, so cool. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Charles. Your wife's cooking.
Deborah.
Yay, cool.
Great
Yeah, don't forget to put down your favorite food. What's your favorite food you like to eat, especially in this in the valley where it's going to get hot for a minute? I'd like to eat whatever Charles is cooking.
Hi, George. Hi, Manu.
Thanks, Lee. I like that. Whatever Charles' wife is cooking, I like to eat. Cool. We'll all go over to Charles's house afterwards. Favorite food? Any Kamayan dinner with Pastor Fell? Cool.
Good to hear that.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. We'll wait a couple of more minutes as people join us. Don't forget to put your name, where you're from, and your favorite food. What are your favorite food to eat? All right. My favorite comfort foods are mac and cheese, mashed potatoes that my husband makes. I'm not mad at you. However, these are not his options. Well, that's why I tried to make sure that I didn't say healthy. I just said whatever. So I'm good. Any type of fresh bread. Yeah, I love bread myself. Cool. We'll wait a minute more or so, and then we'll get into our discussion today. I'm going to share my screen with us. All right. Cool. Ripe, juicy peaches this time of year. So Ellen, how do you say Phil, you might have to help me. Pork bun siopao?
Yeah, Shopao.
Shopao. Got it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Good stuff right there.
Good. Okay. I'll eat it. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I'll eat it. I'm good. Anyway, welcome again, and we're going to get started as people continue to join us. So this webinar this afternoon is going to be caring for our college and university students through campus ministries during COVID-19. Last week we talked about the K through 12 students as they entered, and I thought it'd be helpful to talk with our campus ministers, faculty, students, grad students, just to talk about how it is for them going back into their studies this fall. So I have a variety of people that are going to be on, and they will introduce themselves, but I want to at least put their names up. So we'll start with Dr. Cow, Reverend Dr. Cow. If you can introduce yourself, and then you can go down the list as you see on the screen, panelists, and introduce yourself also, okay?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Nichols. My name is Fel Cow, clergy, conference director of camping and retreat ministers, and of course, young people's ministers, and glad to be here with this wonderful panel.
Good afternoon. My name is Patty Barcher. I'm retired from 34 years of working at San Francisco State University, where I was the university attorney and taught business law and international business law. And I am finishing up my tenure as chairing our annual conference board of higher education and campus ministry. Thank you for having us.
Hi, everyone. I am Sarah Tillema, and I am the director and campus minister at CA House, which is the United Methodist affiliated campus ministry at UC Davis.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rylan Fernandez. I graduated from UOP, University of the Pacific, back in May with a Bachelor of Science in Psychology and a minor in Philosophy. I can work as an intern here at Sacramento Japanese United Methodist Church.
Thank you, Rylan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Shu. I am going to be a senior at the University of Southern California. I'm a double major in NGOs and social change and religion, and I also lead a campus ministry on campus. And yeah, glad to be with you all today.
Thanks.
Hi everyone, I'm Bridget Wipfler and I'm going in through my sophomore year at the University of Washington. I'm a student in public health and my home church is Los Altos United Methodist. But I'm living in Monterey right now and I'm super excited for this conversation. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Want to just give some data on how many young adults that we have in the conference, at least through the data that we have through the Christian, those that are going through our in Christian formation groups. This year we have 1,698 that we have, and last year was 1,823. So just to give you some perspective on that, we're still trying to get as much data as we can about how many young people that we have in the conference that are going to colleges and universities, and talk through ways of how we can support them, either the ones that are coming from our congregations that are going to colleges and universities, or those that are in our congregational areas, even if we don't have the 18 through 25 or 18 to 30 or some of that age group in our congregations. There are that age group around or a college around. And I listed a resource that's going to be very helpful that I looked at. There are a couple of wonderful resources that are available through our General Board of Higher Education Ministry. So I'll put that in the chat so then it could be live and you can just click on it and find those resources. Before I begin with some of the questions, I thought it might be helpful just to talk about some of the loads that our students are facing when they go back. And I'm going to use some technical language, but I thought it could help frame some of of our discussion today. A lot of students are going back. A lot of people ask the question, how are you going to learn, or what type of teaching is going to go on? And there are basically three types of ways that people can interact with lessons and faculty and each other. They're going to do it face-to-face, meaning that's the way most of us have entered our college or training. It's face-to-face in a classroom. Another option is online, which is strictly online, all online, where people are learning through webinars or those types of things as we're doing today. And the other option is hybrid, and hybrid just means a mix of both. For some of the science professions, for nurses or those that need labs, they have to do it hybrid. So they have to go some face-to-face and they have to do some online. And when we talk about online, there are two different types of online learning. Everybody might think that the only way to do online is to do what we call synchronous online learning, where it's live, like we're doing now. So this is synchronous, it's live. But there's another way to do it. We called it in former times pre-recorded. This show has been pre-recorded, and that would be an asynchronous type of learning. So there are two types of learning that students can get online, either synchronous or asynchronous, and there are overall three types of learning, either face-to-face, online, or a hybrid, a mixture of both. So those are some of the things that our students have to juggle with as they go back to take classes this fall semester, and it'll probably be a little bit of this in the spring semester also. So I want to start, and if you have questions about that, yeah, put that in the comment section so we can get some of the questions that might come up. But I'm going to ask some of the panelists. I asked the panelists some very specific questions, and want to hear some of their responses. And I'm going to start with Bridget, who's a student, a sophomore student, who is going to school at the University of Washington, but living in Monterey, but she's going back up to Washington and won't be going face to face. So this is something that's very, but the question I want to ask you is, as a student, how do you feel about re-entering college? Washington State University of Washington. I said Washington State, sorry, mea culpa. University of Washington this semester. And what is one thing that you want people to know about the emotions and how we can support you?
Yeah, I was, in preparation for this question, I did a lot of reflection on the quarter that we spent fully online last year. Say in the spring, it was fully online. And so a lot of people had kind of hybrid semesters where they did some of their semester online, but we had a full quarter. And there was a weird combination, and going into this year, there's a weird combination of being pretty optimistic because there's no added distractions with extracurriculars or the fact that we can kind of mold our own schedules. So there's that kind of optimism with taking advantage of education during this time. But there's also a greater strain because there's this added stress of, because you don't have those extra distractions, you have to be performing better because you have all of this extra time to focus on your studies. But there's a little bit of added stress in that context, but I think in general, there's a bunch of extra distractions of having a global pandemic, political turmoil, the social justice movement. And so I think distractions aside, there are so many emotions to be felt. And going off of that, many college students are feeling pretty helpless. I feel like college is where we physically go to kind of discover our passions, and it can be especially confusing right now because we can't get those like hands-on experiences that can shape our passions and our futures, and we can't physically get our foot into the door because kind of the whole playing ground is so unrecognizable right now, unplayable almost. And so a lot of people can feel almost like they're backtracking and regressing into like high school selves or some people that were not currently in college. And so I've been talking with a lot of my friends about how we're feeling lost as a result, because we kind of begin to thrive and figure ourselves out while we're away, and we're kind of tossed back into our old routines or old homes, and it's so easy to curl back into our whole old high school self. And on top of that, we might have family members that we're living with that are giving us schedules or telling us how to feel or act, adding to that inner dialogue, because college can be a literal escape for many college students, and it's frustrating to go back to where we deliberately would leave, and so students are locked down in a potentially like unhealthy environment and not have the ability to kind of step into a study space or a worship space to get away. And so whether talking about these emotions that we're feeling, a lot of the time, since it's uncharted territory, whether it's like emotions that we're coming back to or new ones that we're experiencing, since we can't really, a lot of the time it's super easy to not be able to identify them. And because it's such uncharted territory, it's hard to identify. And when we can't, it's almost impossible to react. And so in any case of where we land on the spectrum of negative emotions that we're all experiencing, when we can't put a name to that, we can't personally identify them. And so we can feel kind of alone in that situation. So it's easy to suppress and deny anything that comes up. And it's also super easy to feel ashamed of any negative emotions, because we might feel like what we're going through, whether that's like loneliness, anxiety for our future, or disappointment in what's happening to our college career, well, we might feel like it's unimportant in the grand scheme of things. And we don't want to seem ungrateful for shelter that we have or the health that we have. So that can be super isolating and costly to our mental health, which is so important. And so going back online, it's difficult because, as I said, we don't have that physical place to go back to. Most of us are going to be fully online. And so we don't have that physical classroom and limited social interactions where we can't start those conversations and connect with others that are going through the same thing. So I think going forward, I think we need to prioritize starting those conversations, because, and so for school faculty and educators, kind of having an empathetic response and knowing that everybody is kind of feeling this way, and being flexible with students is super important, especially for those that might not be performing like they usually are. And kind of I think it's really important to be the first one to start that conversation. In isolation, a lot of students get overwhelmed and it's easy to, shut down. And so creating a space where students can ask for help, guidance, assistance, really important. And more often than not, students don't have those resources to talk about what they're feeling or how they're feeling. And when given the opportunity, I think they will, or I hope so. But I think also knowing that they will respond. And I feel like personally, we ask, how are you? And it's kind of changing where people are responding super honestly now. In the past, it's been super fleeting, like, oh, how are you? Oh, good, you know. And I think it's important to normalize responding in an honest way and being ready for that honest response too. But yeah.
That's very helpful. I think what you're saying about starting conversations and initiating, even for parents, when you have students at home, to start those conversations and giving space for some of the emotions to be visible and to be heard. As one person asked, can small groups be started either online or in person to help connect and process those feelings? Absolutely. Because one of the challenges is, as you said, just breaking away and getting an opportunity to talk and to process, not just online, but also in those places where you can be face to face. So thank you, Bridget.
Thank you.
Also, Michael, a question for you. You're a rising senior. What do you notice about students and students organizing in this moment of the pandemic and the cries for racial and social justice? What are you noticing, especially on social media? And what is different about this time? Because you will be graduating in a COVID moment where you had the first 3 years that seemed pretty normal.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we've seen from my personal experience during this pandemic, especially, I think that first, because of the pandemic, people have had more time to just do things in general, and you know, they don't have to worry about other things. They don't have to worry about going out to certain places. So because most of us are, you know, sheltering in place most of the time. So because of that, there's more things to do, and oftentimes there are a lot more time on the phone, on smartphones, and the internet, which means that social media has played a big role in spreading and activism and advocacy and organizing. And I know a lot of my peers that there's just been a lot of initiatives that's been taking place, not only with Black Lives Matter, but also like the local issues that pertain to universities, such as, you know, the need for more financial gift aid, because USC has significantly cut our gift aids, and that has harmed many low-income students, and many of the low-income students are usually communities of color. And so this pandemic really has just amplified the flaws of our system, of our political system, of our economic system, and all the other systems that we interact with on a daily basis. And so I think that's what churches need to realize, is that, for one, young people are organizing. Many young people are organizing. I think churches need to center young people's needs, and not tokenize them. We see that quite frankly too often. And because this is not just for the pandemic, this is for, I mean, because of the conditions that are taking place that are affecting young people, you know, the increase in student loans, the lack of access to healthcare, the much harder to look for, you know, employment, housing, and then you have other issues like mass incarceration of our Black and brown siblings, and police brutality. And all these issues connect with each other. And so I think churches, and I think that's what churches need to realize. And that's the first thing. The second thing I wanted to bring up is, you know, being a college student myself and leading campus ministry, you know, there's the extracurriculars for me, at least, it's going to look differently. And so it's just going to take place online. So we know with our campus ministry that we have here, we're going to have a weekly Bible study. And one of the things we're going to do this year is instead of just go look at a passage in the Bible and just, you know, pick out whatever and just study it and see what it means for us today, kind of a thing, we're trying to base our Bible studies off of spiritual questions that young people are asking in this modern age. And then that's what we're trying to base our Bible study out of, is those questions. And then going into the Bible, seeing the passages, seeing what scripture is relevant. And so that's what we're trying to do. And then also we're trying to bring in guest speakers, experts in various issues. We're going to bring in Jeffrey Kwan. We're going to bring him. We were supposed to have him last semester, but because of COVID, that got canceled. So we plan to bring him via Zoom again this semester. We're hoping to bring in a Palestinian speaker from Fosna over, and just to try to help connect our members, connect the principles of their Christian faith to the issues facing our society. And that is what we got to do. And the last thing I wanted to bring up was, I think as college students, I think there's, and for faith communities to take into account, there's three things I guess there's three things to take into account. Number one is the passion, two is skill, and three is the vision. So the passion is, you know, individual person, that comes from the individual person going into college, you know, finding your way through college. You find your passion, that's where you get your energy. And then you have skill, and that's what colleges teach you. That's what you go to class for. That's why you go, that's why you study, hit those books and study those books, because you learn the knowledge, you learn the skills. But then the last part is, I think this is where churches going to have to churches are really going to have to focus on, is the vision. Reminding or try to guide young people into saying, hey, you've got your passion and you've learned the skills from college, but let's use those two things and push for the greater good in our society. Because you can have all the skills, you can know all these things, you can have all the skills and passion, but if you use it to harm people, if you use it to just to harm groups of people, then it's no good. So that's where church is going to have to take responsibility and say, hey, this is the vision that Jesus has called for us. This is the vision. If we're going to truly be, if we're going to call ourselves Christians, you know, this is where we got to go.
I hear you. I appreciate that, Michael, because I think as people re-enter into the churches or align with the churches as they're going through college, the younger people that are coming up are going to be activists, and they're going to have some ways of being that could be very different from before. And how do you create in congregations and through campus ministries cultures that allow that to be okay, and at the same time formulate, from what I hear you saying, formulate a vision for how it can be used for the kingdom of God and the common good. So I hear you.
Yes, just one last thing. That's where I can't emphasize this enough, but churches need to center the needs of the younger generation, but also the needs of the Black community, the needs of the Latinx community, Palestinian community, needs of marginalized communities in general. Yeah. And some of us might identify multiple communities. So that's where churches need to take that.
Sure.
That's important.
Sure. Well, thank you, Michael. Ryland, you graduated. How was it for you graduating last spring? As this COVID came up, as a former vice president, I know we had drive-through graduations, not drive-bys. What advice could you give to the seniors graduating this year, and how can we support you as you graduate, as you've graduated from college and from the University of Pacific?
Whew, boy, I'll tell you, it was a weird experience. I mean, we went on spring break, and then all of a sudden they just told us we won't be coming back for in-person instruction. We're getting a second week. If you're living on campus, please, like, when you come back, pack up your stuff. You're going. And so I still had an apartment on campus, so I came back and I was just left with 2 months. And I was hoping that in those last 2 months, my last 2 months of university, I could spend it with friends. I could spend it, really getting that final piece of education that would help me get my degree. And, I hope to spend that time saying farewell to a place that I had spent so long in, basically had lived in for 4 years. And it was also definitely a rough transition going from in-person learning to online learning, because going from in-person instruction where I kind of at least had some form of social accountability through sort of social embarrassment for not doing the assignment, to online learning where it's on you and you need to, it is on you, and being stuck in one place for an entire week, that's no good. And so I fell behind for the first 2 weeks. And after those 2 weeks, I finally got my stuff together and I just laid out my schedule, and it was definitely a rough transition. And professors were very helpful during that time, and helped me go from, that in a one-on-one person sort of interaction to now we're online, we're chatting through a screen. Yeah, it was awkward. It was rough. Now graduation, that was a very tough pill to swallow. Going from an entire ceremony to a web page. We were told to sign in on the day of our graduation to that web page, and on that web page was a series of videos recorded by our speakers, and what I'll call slides. They were basically PowerPoint slides, and these are the ones that would usually be shown up on the screen as you're walking across the stage, but they were slides, and we're asked to customize them, and that's basically all we had for graduation. It felt like, that achievement, it felt like it was kind of taken from me, knowing that I had worked so hard, and now it doesn't feel like I'm going to be recognized for all the work I'd put in all these 4 years. And especially I knew it hit hard for a lot of my friends. They had worked so long, so hard. Some even worked 2-3 years only for college, but all that education was just packed into that amount of time, and there was really nothing. All they had was, hey, congratulations, but we'll see you in a few months if we can hold a physical one. Yeah. And it still, to be honest, doesn't feel like I've finished my time at university. It feels like I just kind of packed up my stuff, moved back home, and now I'm kind of just waiting, kind of in a hiatus. To address that second part where you asked what advice could I give to seniors graduating this year.
And the reason, Rylan, that's important is because we're hoping that COVID clears, right?
That's the hope.
Spring,
that's the hope.
Or clears in December, but it might not. So what advice could you give?
Honestly, and I had to face this too, you need to understand and realize that most of what you would hope for in your senior year, most of what you've planned for, it might not happen. And it's important to take time to just process that and sort of grieve, because you've lost a lot. And I know senior year is always it's huge. It's a huge year for a lot of people. This is where they celebrate. This is where it's a victory lap almost for some people, but it's gone. Now that being said, there are some things that actually can be adapted to work in this sort of new reality we find ourselves in. We have a number of tools and services that allow us to connect with people at an amazing, almost impossible and ridiculous way that almost seemed to like who could do that? A few decades ago, you couldn't even fathom picking up the phone and just texting somebody and getting a response within seconds. Utilize those tools, use them, keep those connections alive. We had a guest speaker at our church, my home church. His name is David Woods Bartley. He's a mental health advocate. He mentions often that connections create hope. And so we need hope in this seemingly hopeless time. So keep those connections alive, those connections to your friends, your classmates, your families, your faculty, keep them alive, because those connections will create hope in us that'll allow us to just power through what seems like a hopeless time. And then above all, I think it's important to trust in each other and have grace for one another, because we are not perfect, and it's going to be difficult. We're all still adjusting to this new paradigm, and we're not going to get things right the first time or the second time, even the third time, even the fourth time. It's a process. It's a cycle. We need to at least have some space for each other. Your professors might start trying out new formats, that maybe might not work for everybody. I know that I had asynchronous learning for one class, I had synchronous learning for another class, and then I had this weird hybrid of both. And we changed the process throughout the semester, those last 9 weeks of the semester. And so, remember to have grace for each other, trust in each other, know that we are going to get through this together, and leave a little bit of space for, for error to occur. Third question, you asked, how can we support you as a graduate? Please, and again, I can't stress this enough, stay connected with us. We need connection. Stay connected to us, keep reaching out to us. If there's a college student, if there's a college ministry that's active in your church, and you have college students that you've already made connections with, reach out to them again and talk to them. I know the church that I had just left after 4 years, Central United Methodist Church in Stockton, they sent me a care package, and they continually kept up to date with me. And that sort of connection didn't make me feel isolated. You don't want to feel isolated in this time, because, we're all cooped up in our homes. We're all operating out of our homes, working from home, we're learning from home. It feels like, we're alone. We're talking through screens. I can't wait for the day when I can sit down with some people that I have loved and do still love throughout these years. And I just can't wait to hug them. I can't wait to shake their hand. I can't wait to give them the high five. I cannot wait to get back in person, sit at a table and have a meal with them. But until then, we can't. And so the best thing we can do is just stay connected, using the many tools around us, our social media, our phones, our everything that we have at our disposal. Keep those connections alive. Also, if you have any professional connections that relate to what we studied, please help us out, because entering the workforce at this time especially is not going to be an easy endeavor. And if you got some hookup somewhere, please, we need that. Yeah. I needed that, and here I am. So yeah.
Rylan, I like that suggestion. It'd be grand if we could post those that graduate what their majors are, and post that so that around the conference, if there are mentors or people that have graduated, or even alums that are have graduated, they can connect. So it's something to think about. But thank you for sharing the story. I know it's been a challenge. Yes, I know it's been a challenge. Sarah, you are a campus minister at CA House at UC Davis. What have you noticed in regard to campus ministries that has been affected by the pandemic? And talk to us a little bit about the economic impact, because sometimes that's missing, and how we can support students through campus ministries.
Yeah, so first, thanks to Bridget, Michael, and Rylan for giving us such a great picture of what this last spring looked like and what it continues to look like as we transition into the fall. So I can say that as a campus minister, many of the things that you all have brought up are also what I heard from the students that I work with at UC Davis. So as far as campus ministry goes, things looked very different in the spring. I can speak from my context at UC Davis specifically, but I know that similar things were happening at our other campuses around the conference. But we transitioned to an online program. We still were able to maintain all of our weekly spiritual engagement opportunities, but we took it to Zoom, which was really great. There are benefits to being on a Zoom format. There are also huge disadvantages, but overall, I found that it was really an honor to be able to be in campus ministry this spring and to walk alongside students as we all navigated this unprecedented time together. There was, in general, a drop-off in engagement from students because lots of students were moving back home. There was all sorts of changes to people's situations which affected their ability to be present at gatherings. But there was, at least in my context at CA House, there was this core of students who really came around every week and engaged with one another on a level that was really profound, and that they were having really vulnerable and raw conversations that were very honest and I think healing for many of them as we kind of navigated this really stressful season, kind of pointing to a lot of the things that have already been mentioned by the students that are on this panel. It was a really stressful time and many of them rose to the challenge. And I think that also being able to have opportunities to go more in depth about what this experience was like and to process that in campus ministry settings was really valuable for many of our students. So that's just generally to say a little bit about kind of what the programming looked like. But what I noticed as a campus minister, as we transitioned into this pandemic time, was the economic impacts and how it affected students, which that was what was most significant for me in the changes of what my day-to-day life looked like as a campus minister when we hit March 2020. So, I mean, in general, students are a vulnerable population, which many of us don't operate on that assumption. We kind of have this outdated assumption that college students are financially dependent on their parents and that they have some sort of general stability, even though we also joke about how ramen is a diet staple at the same time. But that's a whole other issue for another day. But in general, this is not really a picture that's true for many of our students. There's a growing population of university students who are not financially supported by outside funding or from parents, which leaves them very vulnerable to unmet basic needs. So to give some statistics on this, there was a survey that was done in the University of California system, so this UC system specifically back in 2016, that explored food and housing insecurity in the UC campuses. And they discovered that this was a widespread issue across all 10 campuses, with 5% of undergraduates and graduate students indicating that they had experienced homelessness during their time as a student. And 42% of undergrads and 26% of graduate students reported experiencing food insecurity. So that's back in 2016 when times are normal. So if we transition that to 2020 in the middle of a global pandemic where the economic impacts are very widespread, you can probably guess that students were hit very hard by this transition. And I can say that personally at UC Davis, this was what I was seeing with our students, that almost overnight when we hit that mid-March point and campus went onto a remote format, students lost on-campus jobs. As we started sheltering in place, many businesses were either shutting down or just closing up for a time, and many students were laid off. So income that was really important already for them to be able to continue to make their housing and food payments were suddenly gone. And that happened instantly. And that doesn't even take into account what people's family members were experiencing as well. So students lost jobs, but also many of their parents lost jobs. So there was a whole level of economic impact that was multi-generational that was affecting students really suddenly. And so I know that at CA House in particular, we responded quickly with offering a variety of options to meet basic needs of students. So we were able to provide an emergency housing assistance fund. We increased the amount of food that was available through our food pantry and by offering grocery store gift cards to students where we could. we provided some funds that were available, as this kind of came a little bit later, but as we kind of started to see the mental health ramifications of this time and of the isolation that came with it, we were able to start offering funds to support students in that way as well. But in general, to the economic point, this is something that's going to continue into the fall. Students who are already very susceptible to food and housing insecurity as their university students, that is only going to be heightened as we transition into fall 2020. And so that's something that I would encourage you to be thinking about as you're considering how can we support the students in our midst. And there's many ways you can do that. First, I would say to reach out specifically to the young people that are in your congregation. It's already been mentioned that there needs to be some sort of initiation from you rather than expecting students to come to you to express what they're going through. So taking the initiative to see how students are doing. Is there a way that your church or you individually or your family can help the students to meet housing and food needs? Also, you could reach out to the campus ministries that are nearby. I mean, I can say that as a campus minister, I have all sorts of ways that I could think of. If someone were to ask, how can I support the students that you're working with? I could think of very specific ways that we could support the students in our midst. So I would say reach out to the campus ministers, especially if there's a campus that's close to you or one that is generally one that many of the students from your area go to, and that includes community colleges. We can't forget about our community college students as well, to ask, how can we support those students and what are you doing? And I can say that in the conversations that I've had with campus ministers in our conference, food insecurity comes up all the time. Like that is always something that comes up in our conversations, not just in the middle of a pandemic in 2020. This has been a part of the conversation for years. So I can guarantee that all of your campus ministers at the various campuses near you and at churches that are close to campuses, they already are having a conversation about how to meet student food needs. So I would encourage you to connect with them if this is something that you're passionate about as well, and see how you might be able to support what these campuses already have going on right now.
Sarah, thank you for that. I really appreciate the comments about just the economic impact, because the students were not allowed to get the stimulus monies, so they didn't get that. So, and they did lose jobs. If their financial aid was tied to work study, it was gone, and they had to deal with that, and the housing and all those types of things. And it was easy to say go home, but some people didn't have homes to go to. It was a challenge. So, and it continues to be a challenge. It's not gone as the students enter the fall. So thank you. Patty, I want to ask you a question. What have you learned? I appreciate your service on this as chair of this committee, but what have you learned about ministry to college and university students during this pandemic, and what might we do to support students and educators as they return this academic year?
Thank you for including me on the panel. And all I can say is, listening to our students and our campus minister, this is why we are in campus ministry. Just listen to what people have said. This is it, and this is why we do it. Our annual conference through the Board of Higher Education and Campus Ministry currently funds and significantly supports 8 campus ministries. We have the Ecumenical House at San Francisco State, which is a multi-denomination house with a very small intentional living community right across the street from the San Francisco State campus that serves both San Francisco State as well as City College of San Francisco. Sarah has told us a lot about CA House at UC Davis, and they have a very large multi-faith living community there. We have One Wesley Foundation at Merced, serving UC Merced and Merced Community College, and the interim pastor of Merced United Methodist Church, is also serving as the interim campus minister. We have a United Christian Campus Ministry at Stanford that is housed at our Wesley United Methodist Church in Palo Alto. We have a very active ministry to Korean students through Berkeley Korean United Methodist Church. We have the Feast at UC Santa Cruz, which is a student-led ecumenical ministry. And we have Delta Wesley, which is housed at Stockton Central United Methodist Church, serving Delta Community College, and also providing significant support to the student ministry at the University of the Pacific, which is our only United Methodist affiliated university. We find that California and Nevada is blessed with world-class universities and community colleges. And it is our hope that the annual conference will continue to make it a priority to have a progressive Christian presence on as many campuses as possible. What I have noticed throughout the years, the tie that brings all of our campus ministries together is that they are the practitioners of radical hospitality. They open the doors and students come in. They provide a comfortable place to gather, strong Wi-Fi connection, and excellent coffee or free food. The problem is no one can walk in the door anymore. So they have been able to turn on a dime and just stunningly continue their ministries in a way without missing a beat. The students and the campus ministries are already well-versed in the technologies that are taking our local churches so long to figure out, particularly how to unmute your microphone on a Zoom call. They know how to do it without even thinking twice. I'm just amazed at how quickly they've been able to continue their programs with Bible studies, covenant groups, even virtual pizza parties. As we all entered shelter in place, they continued successfully their ministries and have continued them even through the summer. That's how dynamic they are. What is unknown, however, is what's going to happen this fall. No longer will students be walking by the campus ministry house. No longer will students be able to see the campus ministry table on the quad. No longer will students be able to tell other students they meet in their classes about our important Bible study groups or free lunches or movie nights. How will these campus ministries reach out to the new students and make their presence felt on the campus? And as you've already heard, this is where the power of connection and our connectionalism will work. We need a well of communication to hold and support these students and our campus ministries. We need to not just send our grads out with our best wishes and figure it's time to go, that's that. We need to continue to reach out to our student populations. We need to help these students identify campus ministries at the places they will be going and the communities that they will be entering. Local congregations can reach out to our existing campus ministries and offer support, as Sarah has indicated, which is very easy to do. Our board will be working very closely, continuing with our campus ministries and with the annual conference to try and make these connections more readily available. One example of one of our campus ministries was a virtual food night where they ordered food from DoorDash to all participants in a discussion group and had them delivered to their homes, wherever in the country their homes happened to be. And they gathered together for discussions on Zoom. Those are some of the simple things that can happen. My congregation here in Half Moon Bay created a group that they call Friends of Grads, also known as FOG for short. Now we're in Half Moon Bay, so it's very appropriate. And they are also keeping in touch with our graduating students, sending notes, birthday cards, care packages, even if the students are still living at home. We're trying to let our students know that they may have gone and graduated, but they're still connected to the United Methodist Church, and it's critical to the well-being of our students as well as to the life of our congregation. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Patty, for that. And I've seen a couple of questions. Paul, we're going to get at your question in a moment. And I saw a question from JB. Can you list the contact for each of the campus ministries? So we're going to get a list in the chat of all the campus ministries and the contact people. So we'll put that in the chat also in a moment. So JB, thank you for that. That's great. Yeah, Sarah, you going to say?
I was going to say I can start working on that so that.
Yeah, if you can, Sarah, that'd be great. Thank you. And thank you, Patty, again for your leadership with this this committee, this conference committee. And also want to bring Fel in. You know, when you and I talked, Fel, you talked about resiliency and you talked about the core values. So as you talked about resiliency and core values in a prior conversation, how can we encourage resiliency in our young people and affirm education as a legacy, especially for our first generation to college students, our DACA students, our those that are coming from historically underrepresented communities? Their first experience at college is not what it's not what the brochure said. So what give us some ideas about how do you encourage resiliency in our students? And after that, we'll take some Q&A. Yep.
Thank you, Dr. Nichols, Reggie. Mm-hmm. And allow me to say, as I listened to Bridget, Michael, and Rylan, you are our witnesses of resiliency, voices of resilience. And I think the role that I have with Dr. Nichols, Minister Sarah, Attorney Patty, and Selby, our Director of Communications here with TUA, is to provide maybe support and inspiration. And I think of the word resilience or resiliency as the adaptability in the context or situation where college students are in, now that we're dealing with the pandemic. And the word legacy came out, and it always comes out from my mouth because as an immigrant to this country, I originally come from the Philippines, and I was born to a family, children of 10 children, but I grew up knowing there were 8 of us. My father was a farmer and then an educator. My mother was a homemaker. And yet the 8 of us graduated from college, and almost everybody did earned a graduate degree and also postgraduate degrees. And so what I tell my children, my wife Neris and I, we have 3 children, 2 of them we sent to UC Merced and they're now working, is that as a pastor, I don't earn much money, but the legacy that we can pass on to you, our children, is education. You will have a better future and a contribution to community and humanity if you have received education. And that is one thing that people of color could be proud of, and also to have confidence in relating with people, especially in this country where white supremacy, racism, discrimination has really risen up because of the kind of the precedent we have. And so as a source of inspiration, allow me to say, college students, embrace the stories and the narratives that your parents are sharing with you. I listened to the story that was shared by Senator Kamala Harris earlier when she was introduced by former Vice President Joe Biden, that she is the daughter of a Jamaican immigrant and an Indian mother. And the reason why they came over here was to receive world-class education. And I heard that from Patty earlier, the world-class education that international students are wanting to earn when they come over here. And that's I intended to have as well for my postgraduate my graduate study when I went to Pacific School of Religion. And the college international students whose visa are expiring will be sent home, and those who went home already, they don't know when they would be able to come back. So embrace the story, although they tell those stories repeatedly, how they have become successful in their own endeavor. Secondly, college students, as you are in distance learning, parents of college students, set up goals for yourselves. And as I shared last week, I will reiterate again that the education that you receive is not only for yourself, but it is for others, for the members of the community. And I will use the word other-orientedness again. And so that's the meaning of the word Jesus. Jesus means neighbors. Jesus means members of the community. And the education that you're earning is not only for yourselves, but it is for the betterment of the lives of the people in the community. And the third and last but not least is vote in November. Practice the right to vote. And that's an act of your resiliency in order for the young people to help topple down this government that really has helped white supremacy to rise up, sexism, xenophobia, Islamophobia. And that's why we count on the young people in your resiliency, whether it's distance learning or hybrid or in-person learning. Just like what Rylan said earlier, hope. And in the movie Star Wars, I don't know who said it, but maybe Harrison Ford, in the role that he played, hope is built on rebellion. And the social justice work that we are doing and the right to vote is an act of our rebellion in this kind of a government that has really failed us. And so resiliency, legacy, and what a wonderful legacy that we can pass on to the future leaders of our denomination. Thank you, for this time.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Cow. Really appreciate your speaking into the resiliency, because one of the challenges as we talk through the emotions and those other things is not to give up. And there's a tendency to want to give up, especially because all those things that are going on. So I thank the panel. A couple of things. I want to get this question up, and then we're going to have some open mic time. I'm going to bring Tua up to and Selby to see if we have any announcements. But I want to get this question asked, and I think this was directed at you, Rylan. Have you or had friends or classmates that the shelter in place has altered their career path?
Honestly, not that I know of, not in my own circles, but I don't doubt that career paths were altered as a result of this. Nope, actually, wait, nope. Me. What am I talking about? I've accepted a call to ministry back in 2018, and my plan was to go and take 2 gap years after I graduated from university, and then go straight off. However, we're in quarantine. Open travel is discouraged. stay at home as best you can, wear a mask if you have to go out. So I've added a third year. So my hope is that when, and I'm saying when, not if, but when we get out of this quarantine, I'd like to visit the seminaries that I have on my list, and there's a couple. I won't name a few, but if you have any suggestions, feel free to shoot them my way. But I want to visit these. I want to see what the environment's like, what the faculty's like, what exactly, because I'll be here for a few years. I'll be there for a few years, and I want to make sure that I know where I'll be spending my time at before I finally head off into the future. So yeah, me.
Yeah.
To answer your question, Paul.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that answer, Rylan, because there could be some shifts in the COVID moment, and got to give grace for that. Even after people have declared majors and taken all their course credits, there still could be shifts in the COVID moment. God speaks in various ways, right? So I want to thank all the panelists for being together. I know this was a challenging to bring everybody together, and I appreciate some people coming off vacation or still in the middle of vacation. You know who you are. I really appreciate, and I appreciate the list that was generated for all the campus ministers. Selby, I want to see if you had any announcements, and then we're going to have some open mic time. So we're going to ask you if you'd stay on, the participants, the attendees, if you want to stay on, you will open the mics up and you can feel free to ask questions, any questions that you might have. So Selby, good morning. Thank you.
Good morning, Dr. Nichols, and it's great to see everybody. What a wonderful panel, and I just want to take a minute and give my own applause to each of you, and the expertise of Dr. Cow, who is with us. It's been lovely, just lovely. And I also, I have a praise report that I want to share. I have gotten so many stories from local churches in the last week. I am so excited. And so I just wanted to thank everybody. If you're a regular on our Wednesday webinars, you know that I love local community and local church life, and the way the community moves in the spirit. And I want all of those stories. And you've been sending them to me, so I'm so excited. And please keep sending them. We'll post them in the Instant Connection that goes out every week. They'll be on social media, our Facebook and Twitter, and Bishop's Facebook and Twitter. And then they'll also be housed on the news section of our website, as well as some are on the front page of the website as you land, the landing page. So I just thank you, because, what you do in the local church each week is, it changes lives. And I love hearing about it. So thank you.
Thank you, Selby. We're going to keep the lines open. If you have some questions, we're going to invite you to raise your hand or something, or just signify if you have a question you want to ask any of the panelists. So we can get your question. We'll open your mic up and you'll be able to speak. So see if anybody has any questions that have come up that want to raise your hand or that type of thing. You can use the reaction button on the bottom, raise your hand so we'll know. And I'm not seeing a lot of questions come up yet. Maybe, Corey, is that you?
It is.
Yes. Hey, Corey, good morning. Welcome. Yes.
I was so fascinated to hear from everyone today. Thank you so much. This is only my second time coming to a webinar. I came last week also, and it's just powerful stuff hearing from you all in person. I live out in the East Bay and near the DVC Junior College and Los Medanos Junior College. And I was wondering if anybody had some suggestions how to be in touch with or what to do for folks there when there isn't a specific campus ministry kind of thing.
That's a good question, Corey. Thank you. Some ideas and thoughts? Yeah, Patty, yeah.
One of the, we've had many conversations about looking at and supporting campus ministries that are local to the churches. One of the things that's very important is which is difficult in this time, is getting a presence on campus. So many times the local church will have, the local congregation will have either students who are attending or faculty who are teaching at that local university or community college. And they're very good then about making sure that they look at ways of becoming a recognized student organization on the campus. We used to tell people what you would do is you would invite the students to lunch or dinner or a pizza party. And now it's the students that know how to handle the social media and get the presence out. We've heard lots of stories about YouTubes and Facebooks and Instagrams. But even working with the Dean of Students office is a connection with that particular campus to see if there are in fact other student campus ministries. But
Thank you.
Some other thoughts? How do you work? How can someone work with a college or a university and there's not a known campus minister on campus? How can they connect with students? Some thoughts?
I can. Michael, you go first.
Oh, Michael.
Oh, you can go. You sure? Okay. Yeah, I mean, all I would say is, again, I can reach out to the university and, again, centering the needs of the students. So it could be through the Dean of Student Life. It could be through student basic needs. I know we have a student basic needs department at USC. And just ask what they need. And because that's how you earn trust, is through asking them what they need. Don't make any assumptions.
right.
And just meet their needs and try to meet their needs as best as you can, or offer ways that you can support them. That's how you earn trust in the process.
Sure. Thanks, Michael. Sarah.
Yeah, thank you, Michael, for saying that. And yeah, I think building trust, I was going to say something very similar to that, but building trust is really important, that especially with university students, that is the most important thing. So there can't be strings attached to our support of the students. That's something that we need to be really clear on, that if we want to support students, we need to figure out what the needs of students are and meet those needs without the assumption that it means that they're going to be in worship on Sunday, which that may come, but we just need to be really cognizant of that and check ourselves to make sure that we're doing this to support students without ulterior motives, that this means that we're going to bring the young people back into our churches, which is a whole other conversation that we can have. But to build off of what Patty said, I would say that exploring and building conversation with the students and faculty, staff who already are in your congregation is the best way to start, because that's how you can quickly build a network. When you have one contact, they know people who know people who know people, and it just quickly builds. So I would say even starting with one student and finding out how you can support them, they're going to have friends who also are needing support, who will then have friends who need support. So it can quickly grow into kind of a network of people who then your congregation can work to support.
Thank you to everybody.
All right, thanks, Corey, for the question. Are there some other questions that might come up? Some questions from anyone that you see coming up? open for a little bit. I appreciate everybody staying on the line. So you might have some questions that, about campus ministries. Some of you online have students that are going, either they're for freshman year or seniors, people that are graduating. Someone asked, can we offer homes for students to stay in? I think, JB, that's a good question. What are some thoughts? I mean, as an education administrator, former, I have some thoughts. But some thoughts from the panel? Offer homes? Yeah, Patty.
Well, I had to laugh at the question. We have a grandson up in Portland, Oregon, who is going to be starting his school at the Oregon Institute of Technology. Oh. And all of a sudden, he may be totally online. And so we did offer, as the grandparents, we said, he can come live at our house to get out of his house. So he's our grandson. And so he can come live at our house and pretend he's at the dorm or pretend he's not at home anymore. And when you stop and think about it, that is a very good question, because these students graduate it's like graduating from college, and there you are, you're sort of back home. Well, graduating from high school, but you're not going anywhere. So that's something we're looking at, is having him come live at our house, and we'll try not to be the grandparents. We'll try to be. We'll try to.
Well, I think that's the challenge. I think that's the challenge Bridget was talking about, because here you are ready to enter into the adult world, whatever that looks like at whatever age. And now you have to be forced back into the old, the way, you can't do this, you can't do that. So it's creating space. One of the challenges in the COVID moment is COVID itself. So that's what I was going to say, JB. That offers a little nuance to the question, because how do you keep distance, the social distance, and all that in the COVID moment, and at the same time have some semblance of I was going to say rules and order, but maybe that's too much. But how do you have some sense of decorum and those types of things, and giving the college students space to explore and to grow and to be? Bridget, I would love for you. I mean, because this is a challenge. I mean, you're going back up to Washington, and you're still going to be online. And, I'm sure you might be feeling pressure from the folks that, hey, if you stay here, it's cheaper. Bridget, why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I have a bit of a unique situation because I have two brothers in Washington. So I'm going from family to family, but it's a different type. But I think adding on to what you were saying, yeah, I think it's completely different. I think if people could step outside of their high school environment, it would be ideal, but I think, as you said, the hard part is COVID, and the whole independence gaining and discovery, I think, is a little bit off the table already, and that's kind of like the hardest pill to swallow. And obviously I have a twin sister, and we've been just kind of discussing about this, and unfortunately she couldn't figure out a way to go back to her school in Portland, and so she's staying home while I'm gonna go live with my brothers in Seattle. So we're almost looking at it as a experiment, what's gonna change, how is it gonna be different for the two of us, while she stays an extra semester at home. And, you know, adding on to how it's different, she's a nursing student, and she's going to have to go back as of now because they have simulations.
Sure, yeah.
To do, like, she has to learn how to put a catheter in, you know, they can't do that online. And so it's, I think, you know, as I said, the hardest part is that I think it's just completely off the table for the normal independence gaining situation. And that's super awesome, Patty, that you acknowledge that there needs to be some kind of landscape change after high school. You know, people are itching to change something. So I think that's also an important thing, is just to like change something at this point. And so I knew that I needed to change something. So I asked my brothers if I could live with them, and luckily they said yes. So that's where I'm at, yeah.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. So I think, JB, I think if you can create space, and if it's okay, and if it can work in the COVID moment, and there's some love covenant about how we roll, that could be helpful, because part of this journey is not just the academics. You know, as a former administrator, it's not just the academics that is the beauty of college and university. It is the whole becomingness. That's part of the social interaction, the change of venue, the experimenting, and to understanding what freedom looks like at that age, and having a different space to discover is kind of helpful. So I think if churches and congregations can do some of that, I think it could be helpful to draft up something to see how that can work for students. Really great opportunity. Yeah, Phil, Dr. Cal.
Yeah, thank you. I think JB's question is a very urgent, and speaking about adapted ministry, in the camping and retreat ministries, we have campsites, and one of our retreat center is in San Francisco. And due to COVID-19, we lost, and we're still losing revenue, of course. But that is something that I can bring up to the board of camping and see the possibility of the Waller Center that has 35 beds could look into an adopted ministry of networking and see who may be the students, or maybe international students that are needing a temporary place to stay or home. So
it's a good idea.
We can look into that. Yeah,
that's a great idea. That is a great idea, even as a temporary space to be to get away. Great. Any other questions that are coming up that you see coming up? I think I appreciate, it seems like, I'll give it just about a minute or so. If you have a question, we'll bring you up, bring your mic up. You can bring your face up video too. Some people don't want to do that, and that's okay. But if you have any other questions. Well, once again, I want to thank, let's give a virtual hand to our panel. I really appreciate all of you for being with us. Appreciate those that hung around to the end of this webinar. As you can see, our campus ministry program is alive, and we want to keep it alive and well. We have wonderful campus ministers that are doing an excellent job. And even broader than that, we have students that are coming from United Methodist churches in this conference that are going to colleges and universities around the country and around the world. And it's how we can support them, because they are and will continue to be our future United Methodist congregants. And more than that, there will be people that'll be working for the kingdom of God's sake. And so how do we support that? How do we nurture that? And how do we nurture the educational process, even through the pandemic? So I want to give a wonderful thanks to our campus ministers and all the work that they've done and pivoted in this moment, as all of us trying to pivot and do things. And want to thank all the panelists and want to bless those that are going to school, either the attendees or those on the panel that are working through school this semester. I really appreciate. Hang tough. Hang tough. We are around for you. So if it gets kind of tricky, just email or something like that. We want to build some networks with you. For Rylan and those that have graduated, try and keep the things moving, brother, so you can find some internships and all those types of things. We're working on that. Dr. Cal and I are talking through possibly some ideas about ways that we can engage, and we'll get campus ministers involved in that. So thank you. Next week for everyone, the next 2 weeks are going to be about churches, worship. We're going to talk about worship next week, and then we're going to talk about stewardship. We're going to hear about innovative ideas and as people come back from vacations and staycations. We're going to hear some innovative ideas about worship and what people are doing around the conference, and we're going to talk about stewardship. How do you do Apple Pay or Google Pay or those types of things in this COVID moment? Very interesting ideas. So come join us. Tell your friends, come join us, and we hope to see you next week. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, panelists, for being with us, and we'll see you a little bit later. Bye-bye now.